So yesterday, President Donald Trump made a statement. He said, and I quote, he moved the capital of Israel to Jerusalem for evangelical Christians who are more excited about it than Jews. All right. Now, you remember way back when, I guess after he was inaugurated or after the election or somewhere around there, all these evangelical preachers were laying their hands on him in the name of Jesus Christ, as they say. Well, let's go ahead and read this particular article, and I'm going to speak on Christianity some more and the evangelicals, what they believe. Trump said Monday that he moved the capital of Israel to Jerusalem for evangelical Christians. That's for the evangelicals, he said at a campaign rally. You know, it's amazing with that. The evangelicals are more excited about that than the Jewish people. He was likely referring to moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in 2017 and recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. All right. So why are the evangelicals supposedly more excited about him moving the embassy to Jerusalem than the Jews are? As if somehow he is so great that he can affect the change of what the capital is in Israel. The statements are absolutely dumbfounding. So let's go and find out why the evangelicals are so excited about this, and it's not in a good way, folks. Let's first go to, where is it now? Right here. Washington Post, way back in January 23rd, 1999. Jews angry over remark by Jerry Falwell. What does that have to do with anything? Well, it has everything to do with it, because Jerry Falwell was one of the biggest evangelical leaders at that time. They're excited about moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Yet, in Donald Trump's peace plan of the century, he said, and I quote, the status quo must remain. What is the status quo? That the Arabs have control over the Temple Mount. In case you don't know what that is, that's where Jehovah's throne is going to be in the very near future. American Jewish leaders have criticized or has accused the so-called Reverend Jerry Falwell, one of Israel's most vocal Christian supporters. Imagine that! He was one of Israel's most vocal Christian supporters. Well, this is great, isn't it? Or is it? Of inciting anti-Semitism by his assertion that the Antichrist, as he says, will be a Jewish male who is probably alive somewhere today, the Lynchburg, VA base evangelist told a group of pastors in Kingsport, Tennessee last week that the Antichrist, a New Testament figure who will, in other words, in the future, spread untold evil at the end time, will be a full-grown counterfeit of, as he says, Christ. Of course he'll be Jewish. Where did he get that? I'll show you where he got it. And hopefully I can find it, because I just did this video, and one of the articles refused to let go of voice control, and so it was just talking right over me. So I lost the first 13 minutes of that particular video. So I'll try again. So we'll go to this one. Yeah. We'll go to Cyril's catechetical lecture number 15, verse 15. And we're going to find out where Jerry Falwell and the Evangelicals got this from and why they are so excited about having the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And again he says, who opposes and exalts himself all that is called God, or that is worshipped against every God, Antichrist, forsooth, will abhor the idols, so that he seats himself in the temple of God. You see, Paul said Jehovah, not God. Doesn't matter what King James says. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 4, what temple then? He means the temple of the Jews, which has been destroyed. Well, if the temple of the Jews has already been destroyed, and if it was destroyed by anti-Messiah, then why are they saying that the temple must be destroyed again? This is what he's saying in the 16th, let's see here, and the rest of 15th and 16th verse. All right, I'll continue. And as Cyril puts it, for God forbid that it should be one in which we are. So he's saying, God forbid it should be a Roman. All right? Really? I'm going to destroy that argument in just a minute. Why do we say this? That we may not be supposed to favor ourselves. For if he comes to the Jews as Christ and desires to be worshipped by the Jews, he will make a great account in the temple, and he may more completely beguile them, making it suppose that he is a man of the race of David. You see, that is where Jerry Falwell got that from. So the evangelicals today believe what Cyril of Jerusalem, the Catholic, the beast that rose up out of the Eretz, the land, he agrees with the beast, who shall build up the temple which was erected by Solomon, and Antichrist will come at that time, where there shall be not left one stone upon another in the temple of the Jews. Well, that's interesting. That time occurred back in 70 CE, where there was not one stone left on top of the other of the temple. Do you know who ordered that destruction? Do you know who it was who ordered a statue of himself as Jupiter, Zeus, aka Satan, to be placed in every synagogue around the realm of Rome? Well, it wasn't a Jew. It was Caligula. And after he died and other successions thereafter, here comes Titus, the prince of the Romans. That's the prince of the people, Titus. And he's the one that lays waste to Jerusalem. He is a Roman wild beast. I'll get to that in just a minute. And once he's done, he places the engraved image of Jupiter at the corner of the temple. But you see, Cyril of Jerusalem does not want you to know that. So they believe that this Antichrist is going to beguile the Jews. He has to be a Jew, therefore. And that's exactly what Jerry Falwell and the Evangelicals believe. Therefore, they are all Catholics. Followers of Cyril of Jerusalem, the beast that rose up out of the Eretz, the land. Now, so down further, he talks about, even that's what a dreadful is that beast, a mighty dragon, unconquerable by man, ready to devour whatever, whatever, right? The beast. Let's go look at the word the beast in Revelation 13 and let's see what it really says. He says it must be a Jew of David's race, right? All right, let's look it up. First, we must go to Strong's Concordance. I'll use King James Version in Strong's Concordance. And it says, I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise out of the sea. What sea? The Mediterranean Sea. Anybody want to take a guess what beast that was? But wait a minute. Was it a beast? Or was it a therion? A wild beast? Wild? Now it's time to go to Romans 11. Paul's talking to the Romans because he was the only apostle to the Romans, as he said in this chapter. He was the only apostle to the Gentiles, as he said in this chapter. Now, verse 17, and if some of the branches were broken off, he talks about Israel, and you, Romans, being a wild olive branch. It says wild olive right here. Wild beast. Where is it? Right here. Wild beast. And wild olive. You notice a similarity? The beast is not a Jew. He is a Roman. Checkmate. Now, let's look and see if we can find. I think that's all I need from here. Anti-Semitism and Christianity. I think it's in here somewhere where it talks about the this might not be the one. See, that's what happens when I work so hard to get this right, and then right, get rid of that. Back in the early days, I had an article up in on the other one. This is the one that I did, and it got messed up. No, that's not it. But it showed that that the Protestants, the Lutherans, the Baptists, the Anabaptists, the Evangelicals at one time, back in the 1500s, they all knew that I still think I could find it, that the man at the Vatican was the one that they termed, as they would term, Antichrist, right? So I think I'm going to try to look that up again. I don't know if I can get it this way or not. I think it's this one. Maybe. Early church, post-Nicene Christianity, pro-Reformation Western Church accusers, all right? Protestant Reformation. It's in here somewhere. Let's see. All right, here we go. Protestant reformers, including John Wycliffe, Martin Luther, John Calvin, Thomas Cranmer, John Thomas, John Knox, Roger Williams, Cotton Mather, and John Wesley, as well as most Protestants of the 16th to 18th centuries, felt that the early church had been led into great apostasy by the papacy and identified the Pope with, as they say, the Antichrist. Even Luther declared that not just a pope from the time to time was Antichrist, but the papacy itself was, as he says, Antichrist, because they were the representatives of the institution in opposition. All right. So we have that established. All right. Now, so let's go and look at... I want to look at this. I sent this to my dad this morning, but I'm going to read this to you. I think this was taken from this particular, Anti-Semitism and Christianity on Wikipedia. You can look that up, all right? So I'll start reading it. After Paul's death, Christianity emerged as a separate religion, and Pauline Christianity emerged as a dominant form of Christianity, especially after Paul, James, and other apostles agreed on a compromise set of requirements. No, that's not what it says. In fact, you can go look it up in Acts 15, and you'll see that there were certain individuals that came down from Judea, which were teaching the brothers, unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved. And Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and debate with him, and Paul and Barnabas and some of the others were appointed to go to Jerusalem to discuss this question with the apostles and the elders. So they were sent on their way by the church, and they passed through both Phoenicia, which today is Lebanon, and Samaria, and they reported the conversion of the Gentiles. You see, folks, circumcision was never for the Gentiles. There were only 4 things that were given to the Gentiles. You'll see in just a minute. All right. When they came to Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the church and the apostles and the elders, and they reported all that Jehovah had done with them. But some believers who belonged to the sect of the Pharisees, only the sect of the Pharisees, mind you, that's it, stood up and said it is necessary for them to become circumcised in order to keep the law of Moses. And the apostles and the elders met together to consider this matter. After there had been much debate, Peter stood up and said to them, "My brothers, you know that in the early days Jehovah made a choice among you that I should be the one through whom the Gentiles would hear the message." That was, I believe it was Cornelius. All right. The message of good news and become believers. And Jehovah, who knows the human heart, testified to them by giving them the Holy Spirit, just as he did to us. And in cleansing their hearts by faith, he had made no distinction between them and us. Now therefore, why are you putting Jehovah to the test by placing on the neck of the disciples, of the Gentiles, a yoke that neither our ancestors nor we have been able to bear. On the contrary, we believe that we'll be saved by grace of the Master Yehoshua, just as they will. And the whole assembly kept quiet and listened to Barnabas and Paul as they told of all the signs and wonders that Jehovah had done with them among the Gentiles. And after they were finished speaking, James replied. There was no compromise made here, folks. Here's what happened. Listen to me. Simeon, or Peter, had related how Jehovah first looked favorably upon the Gentiles and he sent Peter on that particular trip. Paul was still the only apostle to the Gentiles. But he sent Peter on that first trip so that Peter would understand. To take among them for a people for his name. This agrees with the words of the prophet, as it is written. After this, I will return with the rebuilding of the dwelling of David, which has fallen. And he did. From the ruins, and I will rebuild it, and I will set it up, so that all the other people may seek Jehovah, even all the Gentiles over whom my name has been called, saith Jehovah, who has been making these things known from long ago. Therefore, I have reached a decision. This is James speaking. I have reached a decision. He didn't say, we have reached a decision. James said, I have reached a decision. That we should not trouble those Gentiles who are turning to Jehovah, but that we should write to them to, number one, abstain from things polluted by idols. In other words, no idolatry, no graven images, no pictures of idols, period. Gentiles failed that one. That was number one. And from fornication, failed that one. And from whatever has been strangled, they also have failed on that one. And from blood, aka murder. Or drinking blood, murder, same thing. Whatever. It's when he says from blood, so it means from eating blood and from shedding blood. All right? They failed in all four instances. But this is the only four things that was given to the Gentiles for them to be careful about. Okay? Now, so getting back to this particular section in the article, let's see here. Some Christians continue to adhere to aspects of the Jewish law, but there are a few members who often were considered heretics by the church. One example of the Ebionites, who seem to have denied the virgin birth, they say, of Jesus. His name never was Jesus, never will be Jesus. Jehovah gave him a name that sounded like his own, Yehoshua, because part of the name of Jehovah is in the name Yehoshua. If Jehovah is not in the name of the Messiah, then he is not the Messiah. The physical resurrection and most of the books that were later canonized as the New Testament, for example, the Ethiopian Orthodoxy, still continue Old Testament practice such as the Sabbath. As late as the 4th century, church father, as they say, church father, John Chrysostom, complained that some Christians were still attending Jewish synagogues. What's wrong with that? The so-called church fathers identified Jews and Judaism with heresy and declared that the people of Israel to be extra deum, or outside of God, as they say. Now, if they would have bothered to read Romans 11, they wouldn't have dared to do such a thing. They would have realized that declaring the Jews or any of Israel to be extra deum would be guarantee them eternal damnation. How do I know this? Well, let's just read Romans 11. Verse 11. Have they stumbled? Israel stumbled that they should fall? Jehovah forbid. But because of their fall, which is temporary, obviously, Salvation has come to the Gentiles for to provoke the Israelites to jealousy. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the Gentile world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? What do you mean their fullness? If they're outside of God, as they say, what do you mean how much more their fullness? In other words, what Paul is saying is the fullness of Israel is going to be much greater than the riches of the Gentiles could have ever imagined. When? He says, I speak to you Gentiles because I am the apostle to the Gentiles. I magnify my office, if by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are of my flesh, and may save some of them in those days, because in those days they were rejected, but they're not rejected forever. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the Gentile world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? Huh? You heard that right. But you want to say dastardly things against Israel, don't you? And if the first fruit is holy, the Messiah, who came from Israel, so is the lump, Israel, is holy. And if the root of David, root of Jesse, be holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches are broken off, you being a wild olive tree, like the wild beast, you are grafted in among them, and with them partake of the root and fatness of the olive tree. With them, partaking jointly. So you cannot declare them extra diem. What happens if you do? Here's what happens. You will say then the branches are broken after that might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and you stand by faith, be not high-minded, but fear. So to declare Israel as extra diem is being high-minded. Because if Jehovah did not spare the natural branches back then, take heed lest he also not spare you either. So he's warning them, if you become high-minded and you do not share jointly with Israel and treat them as equals, you too shall be cut off. All right, let's go back to the article. Now he says, St. Peter of Antioch. Well, we know whoever this so-called St. Peter of Antioch is not Simon Peter, because Simon Peter was never of Antioch. He was a Galilean. Referred to Christians that refuse to worship religious images. You know, that graven image at every Sunday church today? Those Christians who refuse to worship religious images, and incidentally, the Amish today still refuse to worship religious images as having Jewish minds. Well, to this fellow of Antioch, thank you for the compliment. Because I refuse to worship your idols, your graven images. And if you say I have a Jewish mind, I want to say thank you. And in the early 2nd century AD, or CE, the heretic Marcion of Sinope, this is between 85 and 160 CE, declared that the Jewish God was a different God, inferior to the Christian one. Well, there's a lot of Christians out there today that believe the same thing. You can go online and you can see that a lot of these people who call Jehovah Satan. And rejected the Jewish scriptures as a product of a lesser deity. Marcion's teaching, which were extremely unpopular. Is that what it says? No. That's not what it says. Was extremely popular. And now you know why that thought still exists today. That though his teachings rejected Judaism not only as an incomplete revelation, but as a false one as well. But at the same time allowed less blame to be placed on the Jews personally for having not recognized, as he says, Jesus, since in Marcion's worldview, Jesus was not sent by the lesser Jewish God. No, Yehoshua was sent by the Elohim of Israel. Jesus was not sent by the Elohim of Israel, but by the supreme Christian God, whom the Jews had no reason to recognize, you see. And on and on and on and on it goes. And like I said, I pulled that from, let's see, I don't remember which one I pulled it from, but you have it here. You can look at this video and read it, or you can go and do like this right here and right click and search Google for it, and you'll find it. Okay? All right. I don't need this anymore. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is the evangelicals have nefarious reasons. You know, the evangelicals that Trump says that he moved the capital of Israel for. He didn't do it for the Jews, he says. He seems to call the Jewish people ingrates. Well, see, the Jews have heard it all before. They've seen it all before by the same people. Why should they trust you? Why should they trust Donald Trump? Why should they trust the evangelicals? Why should they trust any of the Christians after how the Christians mistreated the Jews for so long? We'll go back to Romans 11. We're going to finish this. Behold, therefore, the goodness and the severity of Jehovah, which upon them fell severity. When did severity fall upon the Jews? When Titus destroyed Jerusalem. But toward you Gentiles, toward you Romans, goodness, if you continue in his goodness. Otherwise you also shall be cut off. Well, we can see with nearly 2,000 years of history recorded all of the heinous activity that the Roman Europeans have done to the Jews. Now the Gentiles must be cut off. And they also, not if, but before, double negative, they abide not still in unbelief. In other words, before they believe, they will be grafted in again. Why? Because the promise cannot be changed. As he says here in just a few more verses, for Jehovah is able to graft him in again. For if you were cut out of an olive tree which is wild like the wild beast by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much better chance shall these, which were of the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel, until the time of the Gentiles comes to an end. That's how it's written in Matthew, I believe it says. And so all Israel shall be saved. It doesn't say all Israel might be saved. It doesn't say if Israel repents, all Israel shall be saved. No, it says all Israel shall be saved, because it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer and shall turn away unholiness from Jacob. He's going to save them first and then turn away unholiness from Jacob. In spite of what you Christians say, you see, your God, Jesus, can't do that. He can't save Israel first and then turn sin from them. He's unable to do that. Jesus can't do that, but Yehoshua can. Because this is my covenant. What covenant? The new covenant, as written in Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34, and the last part of that, where it says, when he shall take away their sins. That's the new covenant right here, when he's going to take away their sins. But he has to bring them all back. When it says, grafted back in to their own olive tree, when Yehoshua comes back, he will come to his inheritance in Jerusalem. And in order for them to be grafted in, those haters of Israel must be kicked out of the Temple Mount and out of Jerusalem and out of Israel, and all Israel must be brought back in spite of what the Trump administration, the Europeans, the Russians, the Arabs, the Iranians, the Turks, and anybody else says. Concerning the gospel, they might be hostile for your sakes, but when it comes to the election, when it comes to being the elect, they are the beloved for the patriarchs' sakes, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because of the gifts and the calling of Jehovah cannot be changed. You see, folks, you can't say that they are extra diem. Now, so the nefarious reason for the Gentiles being so happy about Donald Trump putting the embassy in Jerusalem is they believe that it's one more step towards the Antichrist coming to deceive the Jews. You don't believe it? Read Jerry Falwell's statement again. And then read Cyril of Jerusalem, the fake, the fraud, the second beast, and see what he said. Why do I call Cyril the second beast anyway? We'll go back to Revelation 13. All right. So this beast that rose up out of the Mediterranean Sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, the 7 heads were, I don't know if I've got the list in front of me or not. They were the 7 kings of Rome, beginning with Augustus. The 8th, as I remember correctly, was Vespasian. And it was him who ordered his son, the prince of the Romans, to destroy Jerusalem. So him having 7 heads and 10 horns, that would be, you can look up the 10 horns or the 10 toes, and you will see they're European. And upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the names of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet was like the feet of a bear, and his mouth was of the mouth of a dragon, and the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him power, and his seat and great authority. Well, the seat of Satan used to be in Pergamus, but the king of Pergamus had no heirs. So before he died, he bequeathed his throne in Pergamus to Rome. That is how Satan, the dragon, gave his throne to this beast. And I saw one of his heads that were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, which gave power to the beast. I've gone over this time and time again. You can see the dragon right over there at Vatican, in the Vatican City. It's right there for you to see. You can look it up. You can go look it up on Google. And they worship the beast, saying, who's like unto the beast, and all this and all that. And then it says, and it was given unto him a mouth speaking great things of blasphemies. Power was given to him to continue 42 months. 3.5 years. Here's what happened. 67, spring. First month of the Hebrew calendar. They began to besiege the city. 70 CE. The city was in flames in the fall. The temple was burning. And they raped, pillaged, and murdered and destroyed until the last group of Jews committed suicide on that citadel up on the little mountaintop, which was 74, the year 74, 3.5 years later. 42 months later. And he opened his mouth and blasphemed against Jehovah, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. We just read how they do it. We just read it. I showed it to you right here. This is how they do it. And they have done it continually. And it was given power unto him to make war against the saints. The saints are the holy people, the Kodesh. The Kodesh are the Jews. And to overcome them, and he did. They sent them into captivity, made them slaves, took all their wealth and everything, and power was given over him over all kindreds and tongues and the Goy. And all that dwell upon the earth worship them, and whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Now, it says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leads into captivity is going to go into captivity. So now, because Rome did this, Rome now must go into captivity. But that's not what they tell you in church. Because the Christians who took over the Roman Empire and continued the sins of the pagan Romans, they also must go into captivity. Yes, there's no way around it, folks. You call yourself a Christian, you must go into captivity. He that kills with a sword must be killed with a sword. You raise up the cross, and you went around in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. crusades to go and rape, pillage, and murder the Jews and burn them alive and drown them. It's your turn. This is the patience and the faith of the Kodesh. It says Hagios, but you see, John was a Hebrew. The Kodesh are the Jews. And I beheld another beast coming out of the land. You should read the Aretz. And he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon, and he exercised all the same power as the first beast. He was just like this one lived in Jerusalem. This is the reason why I call Cyril of Jerusalem and the people who were with him the beast that rose up out of the land. Now, And of course, the mark of the beast is the cross. It absolutely is. You guys that on Ash Wednesday, you go put your mark of the beast on your forehead, and then you go and make the signals of the beast with your right hand, just like it says right here. To receive, to give. Well, wait a minute, why did they put receive? No, it's to give a mark. To give a mark with their right hand. They go and make a mark with their right hand. And they put one in their forehead. And that no man might buy or sell save he that has a mark, which is the reason why the Jews were not allowed to have a trade. They were not allowed to have a job. The only thing that they were able to do was the one thing that the Christians were not allowed to do, and that is usury. And today, the Jews are good at it, because that's the only occupation they had back in those days. Thanks to these foul Christians. But remember, he that led into captivity the Romans will go into captivity. Guaranteed. He that killed with the sword during the Crusades, you cross carriers, must be killed with the sword. You don't believe it? All you got to do is wait. You don't have to believe me. Wait for it. You'll find out. That includes you evangelicals. You want to block the door to the kingdom by not allowing Israel to have Judea and Samaria? You want to block the door to the kingdom by demanding that Israel keeps the status quo? That the Arabs stay in control of the Temple Mount? That is blasphemous. A big price, a heavy price will be paid for such evil.